Hello, my name is Heather Jennings, and I'm the first to go tonight. When I was asked to do this, I really was hesitant, and really, Debbie thought that I was saying yes, and I told her I would pray about it. So I prayed about it, and God put me here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. I don't have a wow testimony that, a tragic event happened and I turned to God. I got saved when I was young, elementary school age. So I knew to live my life to please God, but I've not always done that. I've definitely not been the model Christian, as none of us are, because we're sinners. But He's always been faithful to me. And I grew up in a home with two parents that loved me. There was no divorce or anything like that, so I had a pretty stable home life. They loved me. They were at every ball game. My dad was the only dad in the ballet recital in the stands at one point. And, so they supported me, but really they never got on board to take me to church when I was little. I went to my grandparents' house or my aunt's house and spent the night on Saturday night a lot growing up so that I could go to church and Bible camp and whatever they were having. So that's my connection to church and to the Lord as a young child. And I've got notes, but I don't know if I'll follow them because, like Sharon said, I'm nervous too. You'd think as a teacher that I would be able to sit up here and talk, but when you're talking about your life, it's a little bit different. And I want to make sure that I give glory to God, because without Him, I wouldn't be here today. My parents would go to church with me on like Easter services and Christmas, but that was about the only time that I saw them in church. My dad would listen to the Gaithers on TV or to some preaching on TV and everything, but never really got to see them there, which bothered me, as I got older, and I started living my life better and was baptized. I worried about whether they were saved or not, and really didn't even know if my dad was saved until after he had passed, and one of his friends had told me that. So that's a very difficult thing to see your parents pass and not know for sure, if they're saved. Okay, so I just totally missed like 5 pages of my notes there by jumping ahead, but I'm going to back up a little bit. Like I said, I didn't really have a lot of bad events in my life, and then I started looking back, and I thought, well, I've really come through some trials, though. When I was in 4th grade, about 10 years old, we found out that my dad had cancer. He had a blood disease that was causing the cancer, and it was a very rare thing. It was incurable, but he wasn't supposed to live but maybe 6 months, and then he would live a year, and then he'd go back to the doctor and something else would happen. And they'd say, well, you got 3 to 6 months, and then another year would go. So through God's grace, he was able to make it 17 years with this blood disease and cancer. And I want to fast forward to when I was in college. We, grew up with him being sick all the time. They were gone to North Carolina for surgeries, Nashville for surgeries, Ohio. So I spent a lot of time with friends and with family also while they were out of town. And, luckily we had that support system to take care of me while my parents were gone. But my junior year in college, my dad went to North Carolina for a checkup, and they found 10 tumors in the upper palate of his mouth. And so they just kept him there then and did the surgery. And with his surgery, he just crashed, and so they had him on life support. And here I was at college, and I get this call, that my dad's on life support in North Carolina. I was in the middle of volleyball season, so I couldn't leave and go, see my parents. So I just had to trust that God would take care of him and bring him through that. And sure enough, he did. And that was about September, I guess. And about November, he was on the plane with me going to San Diego to watch me play volleyball. So I played volleyball for the college, and he had half of his face still literally off from where they did all the surgeries because they had to let that heal before they could do the skin grafts. So we would doctor him in the corner of an airport, and then he went with me. So he was, like I said, he was always there to support me. So I can't complain about, my parents or anything like that. But without God's help, he wouldn't have been on that plane. He wouldn't have been there in the stands watching me play. December 3rd of that year, I turned 21. And a big milestone, I'm an adult now. And about 3 weeks later, my mom got sick with the flu. Well, she had ended up getting so dehydrated that she had a heart attack in her sleep. And, she went into a coma and lasted about a week before she passed. And my mom was my best friend. I'd rather be with her on a Friday night than my friends in high school. So that was a very difficult thing for me. Before she passed, the last thing that she said to me before she started going in and out of not knowing who I was and everything, she said, "I'm going to rest now." So she's resting with God and the rest of our family. And I was so angry when this happened. Why, God? Why did you take my mom, not my dad? My dad's been sick for years. My mom's been healthy. My mom's a good person. My dad, was a good person, but he was hateful a lot because he'd been sick so long, probably. But even though I was not nice about it and I was ugly to God, he still stood by me and still loved me through it all. He was my daddy. He took care of me. He took care of my dad. After Mom passed and everything, I took a break from school, from college. We were on a block schedule, so we had a different class every 3.5 weeks. So it was really a blessing that I was on that type of schedule. So I quit school for 3.5 weeks to take my dad back and forth to his doctor's appointments in Nashville and some in North Carolina, and he still had further surgeries and stuff. So I worked when I could and played ball my senior year and took care of Dad and everything at the house. Through losing my mom, it forced me and my dad to get closer. We were always together on the ball field, and we were always, hanging out and stuff, but we never really had that close, loving relationship, or at least not once I got up to middle school and high school level, because he was your in-your-face coach, and I came right back at him, so we butted heads quite a bit. But through this, we had to get closer. We had to depend on each other. And God knew this when he took my mom. He knew that without, if Mom was still there, then me and Mom would still continue that bond, and my dad and I would grow further apart. But we got really close, and we still had our moments. I mean, when I met Wesley, he can attest to that, that we still butted heads, but we did grow a lot closer. And I loved him dearly, especially those last few years that we had together. New Year's of 1999, I spent that night at the cemetery bringing in the new year. It was a really rough time. And then I went out with some friends, and I met this handsome man that I just fell head over heels for. And another blessing. Wesley's going, "What, me?" Yes, it was you, honey. But there was just something about him that was different than anybody I ever met. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, babe, but pretty good 16 years later, isn't it? But I told my cousin the next morning, I said, I've met the man I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. He's the one. And she's like, yeah, whatever, And he truly was. He was a blessing, definitely. He was the person that I needed at that point in my life. And that was 17 years ago. We got married a year and 2 months after we met, and we will be celebrating our 16th anniversary in March. So I think that's pretty good for us, since, God told me he's the one for you. Now, after we got married, we did have a crazy couple years, though, so it was a little bit of a roller coaster. We got married in 2000. I think that fall I went back to college to get my master's degree. So anybody knows about having to go back to school, that's a stressful time too. And before I even graduated, he left to go to the Virginia State Police Academy. So he was 6 hours away Monday through Friday, and then he'd come home on the weekends. We sold our house, and lo and behold, did we not we were pregnant. So he's 6 hours away. We have no home. I'm living in my in-laws' extra bedroom at the time, and I want to stop and say something about them. Mama, I'm not going to be bad. She told me earlier, she said, "Oh, you're going to talk." We're living with them now currently, if you all don't know, but we have been for 6 months while we're finding a new home. But no, my in-laws, I cannot say a bad thing about them. I love them dearly, and they took me in as their daughter when I met Wesley. There was a lot of times that my mom and papa would bring me stuff back when they go on trips and not their son, so I knew they loved me. But no, I have awesome in-laws. I can't complain at all. But anyway, I had moved in with them, and we found out that we were going to have a baby. So what are we going to do? Wesley's in Virginia. We're going to be placed in Northern Virginia, most likely, 10, 12 hours away from home. I have a dad whose health is, shaky. So we just prayed, Lord, what do we need to do? Please just show us. And we're kind of dumb when it comes to these things. We need to be smacked in the face with stuff before we believe it's God doing it. So here's our little situation when we went to Virginia. Wesley had been there and was getting ready to be sworn in as an officer. So that means he'd be on the road for, I think, 6 weeks. So I rented a house in Virginia. Sight unseen, it was a family member, and you think family members are going to be clean. Not so much. There was cat hair that thick on it, and Wesley's highly allergic to cats, so that was a big no-no, and the Lord knew that we needed that sign, to tell us this is not where you need to be right now. So I stayed in a hotel room with Sandra and Wayne that night. We went and saw his graduation and everything. He walked into his, headmaster, whoever's office, and turned in his badge and told him he was coming home. So on our way back home, we leave Virginia, we're pregnant, we have no home. I don't have a job, he doesn't have a job, we have no insurance. So we just kind of said, we got to lean on God here, you got to take care of us. So he shut one door, but on the way back, he opened many more. Before we made it back to Kingsport or Church Hill, Wesley had a part-time job with his former employee. The next morning, somebody at Eastman Fire Department had heard that we were back in town and Wes needed a job and offered him part-time there as well. About 2 weeks later, I was hired as a teacher at Churchill Middle, and we had one doctor's visit within this whole time that we didn't have insurance for. And my little daddy, bless his heart, he wanted to go and just see what that baby was. He didn't want anybody else to find out before him. Of course, we were going to find out first, but he wanted to be the first one besides us. So we went in and we found out that we were having Isaac and that he was a boy. So we went out in the waiting room, got my dad, and let him come in and actually see the ultrasound. So he just sat there and patted my leg the whole time. He was so nervous, and it was just so neat to him because he'd never seen one. So that was a beautiful moment that God let us have here too, that we wouldn't have been able to have if we were in Northern Virginia. When we came home, we had a lot of ups and downs for the next few months as well. We came home in July. December, Wesley's grandmother passed away. And then about 3 weeks later, Isaac was born. And when Isaac was born, he couldn't keep his body temperature up. And every few minutes, they were coming back to get him and take him back to the nursery. We didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time with him in the hospital. And at 4 days old, he was non-responsive, really. He was just lethargic. His temperature got up to 104. We had no idea what this brand new baby that they sent us home with no instructions was what was wrong with him. So we went back to the hospital and spent, I guess, another week. And they never did figure out what was wrong with him. Nothing showed up, no cultures, nothing. So we still to this day don't know what happened, but God needed us there for some reason, and he's a healthy, vibrant 13-year-old as tall as his mom now. So, and that was one of our major blessings, was having him. And then the day before he turned 3 months old, I was at the hospital with my dad, and I held his hand as he pulled his hand to his chest and breathed his last breath. And at that moment, Isaac was in his crib at Sandra and Wayne's, and he had this little train that would run across the top of his rail, and it went from one side to the other and then quit. And Sandra knew then that my dad had died. And to get to be there with him was another blessing, that we wouldn't have gotten if we'd been so far away. So I'm thankful that God shut that door for us. Let's fast forward to Isaac's first birthday, because I'm running out of time here. Sorry, I didn't think I would talk but 3 or 4 minutes. Isaac's first birthday, about a week before, he had his first reaction to peanuts. I get a call at school, and I beat the ambulance to daycare because I was so scared. He was swollen, broken out in hives, head to toe, and his tongue was swollen outside of his mouth, his eyes were swollen shut, and I was terrified. And God has taken care of him for 13 years. And we have to put our trust in him every time he's out of our home and out of our care. that everybody's going to take care of him. And I want to thank you all as a church for always watching out for him and making sure everything's safe that he eats. 2006, I can't leave this out. Our other little miracle came along, Jacob. And he was coming in like a wild man and is still going strong today. He's our little Spitfire, and we love him dearly, both of them. But I want to touch on one more thing, then I'm going to sit down, I promise. I went through a difficult time. Our marriage went through a difficult time back in 2008. I'd been living a lie with my husband, and scared to death that he would leave me and take the kids. When he found out that I had credit cards that I had charged up and maxed out, and they were calling work to garnish my wages, and just bad situation. I was never taught how to control money or to use money the way God wanted me to. And I had over $60,000 on credit cards when the bomb dropped on me. And I thought we was going to lose our house, our cars, everything. But I went through bankruptcy. Wesley was there to support me. I had everything in my name, thank goodness, that he didn't have to have it attached to his name. But through God's grace, he forgave me, and Wesley forgave me. And we're here today together and stronger than ever, because we have turned to the Lord through all these difficult times. And he's got us teaching or leading Dave Ramsey's class. I mean, somebody that goes from bankruptcy that's now will be out of debt, hopefully by the end of this year, and living life the way we should as far as our finances go, and getting on board with, God's plan. So I had a little bit more, but I'm going to stop there. If you've not taken the Dave Ramsey class, I'm going to put a little plug in for it. I highly recommend it. Because, like I said, I hit rock bottom, and now I feel like that class is my ability to take what has happened to me and how I've messed up and teach others how not to do that. And God's given me that and blessed me with that. So through all of my little trials that I've had in my life and all the joys, God has been there, and he's been 100% faithful to me, even when I wasn't to him.
That was incredible. Keep using that for the Lord. I'm Renea, Jessee. Sharon, you did great. Heather, you did great as well. I always love this night. Every year I like it a lot more when I'm not going to have to be up here. I've kind of dreaded this, but thank you, Sherry and Debbie, for giving me the opportunity to share my testimony tonight. I wrote it down, and I'm probably going to read it, or else I will stand up here and cry the whole time. Thank you both for all you do for WOM. If you're not involved with WOM, I really want to encourage you all to get involved, to come to a meeting or come to the events. I've never left without feeling refreshed and just encouraged. It's really a great group of women, and I really admire the ones that are there. Standing up here in front of everyone is something I would have never volunteered to do. It is most definitely out of my comfort zone. For those in the youth, those working with the youth, you know that my husband is all about stepping out of your comfort zone. He calls it stepping out of the boat. I asked him if I wrote it down, if he would get up here and read it for me. He said that would defeat the purpose of Baptist Women's Night, so he would not do that. So here I am. The Lord's been incredibly good to me, and I do have a wonderful story to tell. There's a lot of my past that I would like to forget. I'm ashamed of a lot of it, but my life is a picture of grace and the Lord's goodness. I'm 29 years old. I've lived in this area my entire life, mostly Carter's Valley. My parents have been married for over 30 years now. I have two sisters, an older and a younger one. I was raised in a Christian home. I went to Cedarview Christian my entire life. My paternal grandparents are the godliest people you could ever meet. I'm proud for people to know that I'm R.F. and June Quillen's granddaughter. They love the Lord, and it pours out of them. If you knew them, you would understand why I'm so proud of that. But no matter how good my grandparents are, how close to the Lord they are, how good my parents were, or the fact that I went to a Christian school was enough to get me to heaven. When I was 7, I realized this, and asked the Lord to save me, and I was baptized. When I was a teenager, we left the church that I had been, that I'd grown up in, the youth group that I was involved in. My relationship with the Lord had remained strong up until that point, but leaving that church really impacted me. Part of my passion for youth comes from this, and looking back now, I think that's why God made it part of his plan. I know how important it is to be part of a church family and to be involved with the youth group. I remember how hard it is to be a teenager, and that was before texting, before Snapchat, all the social media that adds so much pressure to our teenagers today. Even without the technology, there was plenty of drama. I was an awful teenager. To parents of teenagers, I want to encourage you and say that it doesn't last forever. They may tell you they hate you now. One day they'll realize that they don't and that you know what you're talking about. To teenagers, I know that it seems like the world is against you right now. Sometimes it feels like your parents are trying to make your life miserable, and it may be a long time before you realize that they want what's best for you. I know it's hard. I've been there, and I barely made it out, but the prayers of my parents and my grandparents and my youth leaders are what got me through it. Maybe your parents aren't saved. Maybe they don't come to church. Maybe they don't bring you. There's people at this church that love you, that are praying for you every day, even if your parents aren't. So just know you're not alone. Hang in there. Your teenage years can be some of the best years of your life, or they can be the worst. And it all depends on the choices and the decisions that you're making right now. The people that you surround yourself with can impact your life for years to come. I chose the wrong friends, and I made some very bad decisions. I've overcame those now, but I still have to live with those regrets. After I graduated high school in 2005, I was working in an office and going to school to study social work. I've known my husband my entire life, just about. We went to school together from kindergarten until we graduated. His dad was my ball coach, and our families were close. He was 3 years older in school than me, though, so we weren't close then. I ran into Dustin's mom at my little sister's volleyball game in 2006 after Dustin had just moved back home from college in Georgia. His mom found out that I was studying social work, so she got my phone number to give to him because he had just graduated with a degree in counseling. He called me and ultimately taught me out of going into social work. He knew that I would end up bringing every kid home with me. I just didn't have the heart that I needed to do for social work. We became friends, though, and as our friendship grew, he began to invite me to come to church with him. And I hadn't been back to church since I was a teenager at this time. I always had excuses not to go with him. He was the youth leader at his church at that time, and I was probably the last person they would ever have expected him to be coming into church with. I always had excuses, like I said, and I eventually told him I just didn't have anything to wear to church. So he took me shopping, and he bought me an outfit. So I had no excuses. I've tried that excuse lately. It doesn't work now. He won't take me shopping. He knows I have clothes for church. So I'd been in the process of getting out of a bad relationship when we had first became friends, and Dustin never pressured me to change how I was living. He made it clear to me that he thought I knew better, but he brought me back to Christ through love without preaching at me or trying to guilt me into anything. I started going to church with him early in 2007, and the Lord immediately began to work in my heart. Dustin didn't have to do the work because the Lord did it. As a child of God, he won't let you to just continue living in sin. I rededicated my life to Christ then, and he broke those chains of sin that were weighing me down. Dustin and I started dating soon after that, and we were engaged in June of 2007 and married in October. About a year after that, we were blessed with Dawson, our firstborn son. The following year after that, we felt that the Lord was finished with us serving at the church that we had been at. And after much prayer, Dustin resigned as youth leader. We started visiting Ridgeview the summer of 2010. At one of the Q&As that Dustin did a few months back with the church, someone had asked him why Ridgeview. Like, how did you find this church out of all the churches, around here? At the time, we were living down behind Whistle Stop in Carter's Valley. So we drove up and down Carter's Valley every day. And y'all know how many church signs are in Carter's Valley. There's churches everywhere. But something just stuck out to us about Ridgeview sign. So I got on the website and I looked it up and saw that you could, view sermons and stuff. So I uploaded or downloaded, I don't know what it's called, to a CD, a sermon of Pastor John's called Guard Your Heart. We still have that CD. But we listened to it, and the Lord really spoke to us through Pastor John's preaching, and so we decided to visit. The first time that we came through the doors, we felt welcomed. It just felt like home. And this was it for us. We never visited anywhere else. We just kept on coming back and joined within a few months. When I'd had Dawson, I had just turned 22, and the Lord had worked in my life, and he brought me back to him, but I still had a lot of growing up to do. The first few years of Dawson's life was kind of a learning curve for me. I didn't feel called to be a stay-at-home mom at that point, and I went back to school for nursing. I'd gotten a job at the hospital and was starting to work on the weekends some. Dustin wrote on the church blog last week it was, about spiritual contentment and the dangers of it, and that's where I was 4 years ago. We hadn't really got plugged in here at Ridgeview. We would just come on Sunday mornings. I know there's an argument about how going to church doesn't make you any more of a Christian than staying in a garage makes you a car. And I can see the point of that statement, and I agree, because I know that you have to have Christ in you to be a Christian. It doesn't have anything to do with the church. But I also believe that as a Christian, you should have the desire to be part of a church and to be involved with serving in the church. That we should want to surround ourselves with other believers who will lift us up. In 2012, we had really let our careers become a priority over serving, and I'd kind of let my heart just harden with some bitterness about what I thought was a hard life. But the Lord wouldn't let me live like that. I was miserable, and he began to work in our life and in our marriage, and he brought us closer together. In the spring of 2013, he showed us grace and mercy by blessing us with another pregnancy. When I found out I was pregnant, I felt like it was a second chance for us, for our family. But our God chose to bless us with not just one baby, but two babies. I was pregnant with twins. And there's no way you can describe, unless you've ever felt it, what it's like to go and expect to hear one heartbeat and hear two. It was shock. So much shock. It was a full 5 minutes before either one of us spoke. But Ephesians 3:20 comes to mind. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. We had prayed and asked the Lord to bless us, with another child, and he gave us two. Telling my testimony, it's clear I have made a mess of things. The Lord didn't have to continue giving me second chances. He didn't have to work in our marriage or give me a husband who's prayed for me no matter how unlovable I've been. A man that's praying for me right now, I know. I got to some low points in my life, but God wasn't finished with me then, and he's still continuing to work in my life. I'm sorry, I told you I would start crying. Philippians 1:6 says, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. Having twins really got our attention. We had Andrew and Colton in December of 2013, so we have 3 boys, in case y'all don't know, the week before Christmas, and we were able to come home 3 days later. The entire pregnancy just had God all over it. It was a healthy pregnancy. I was able to work up until the month we had them, and we didn't have to stay in the NICU or anything. I had them when they were 38 weeks old. Dawson was 4 at the time that we had him, and he handled having 2 babies come in and just completely turn his world upside down better than I could have ever expected. The Lord put it on my heart then to kind of push pause on nursing for a while and for me to focus on the 3 boys that he had given to us. Becoming a stay-at-home mom has become my mission field. I'm humbled at the calling. We brought the boys to church when they were 8 weeks old and came full force with it. We knew that as hard as it would be to get the 3 kids out the door, 2 of them being newborns, we knew it was even that more important, that if we stopped now, that it would be hard to get back in it. So we chose to use them as a reason to come instead of an excuse. This is where I'm really going to cry. The Lord used Ridgeview, you all here, to minister to us during this time in ways that I never dreamed. I'm incredibly independent. Dustin says stubborn, but when it comes to asking for help, I try to do everything on my own. But you all welcomed us in here with 3 kids, just with open arms. We'd been coming for a few years at this point, but we would only, we were bringing 1 kid, and we were coming on Sunday mornings. Now we were suddenly coming back on Sunday and Wednesday nights, and we were adding 3 kids to the preschool department. We were over half the population of the nursery for a while. And no one ever made us feel like we were a burden. The first Sunday night that we came, it was actually Baptist Men's Night 2 years ago. We dropped the little boys off in bed babies, and I asked them multiple times if I needed to stay and help out because they weren't expecting 2 new babies. They of course said no, so Dustin and I came on upstairs. When they opened up, they came and announced that they needed some more help in bed babies. They didn't page us. Instead of paging us, we clearly doubled the load on them, but they wanted us to be able to enjoy the service. I know that seems like something small, but to me, that's how you all ministered to me, by taking care of my kids. Dustin read a quote to me a while back, and y'all have probably seen it. It's on Facebook, I know. Long before Zacchaeus couldn't see Jesus, the tree was already planted. I think of Ridgeview every time I hear that. And when I say Ridgeview, I know it's not the church building, it's you all, it's the people. The ladies in the nursery were planted downstairs. His teachers were downstairs. The volunteers that had, volunteered to be added on rotation, all of you all, God had put here. And because you were willing to obey that, the Lord used that to minister to us when we needed it most. When Andrew and Colton were just a few months old, our Sunday school class decided that they wanted to watch our boys for us so we could go get a bite to eat without kids, which was a huge blessing to us. And that was a small gesture, but oh my goodness, that spoke so much to us. We felt so loved. We have help from our families, but for, people that we're not related to say, we want to watch your kids so you can spend time together. Y'all really minister to us that way. About a year after I'd had the boys, I started serving on the preschool team. Dustin began helping with the youth, teaching the 9th and 10th graders in Sunday school. I'm not an outgoing person, as you all can probably tell. I'm kind of a loner, so joining the preschool team forced me to get out of my comfort zone. I began to make an effort to talk to other parents and really try to connect to people here. Last year, the Lord started working on Dustin's heart, calling him to preach. Dustin answered the call last summer and surrendered his life over to the ministry. I've shared with some of you all that the Lord could have called Dustin into the ministry years ago. He's always had that passion for the Lord's work. He's always had that. If you've heard Dustin get up here, he's just excited about God, and he's always had that. But I feel like the Lord was waiting on me to get my heart right. Those that knew me in high school and college, or even just a few years ago, are probably shocked to hear that I'm now a pastor's wife. I never expected to be here, but I believe that without a shadow of doubt that the Lord's will is for me to serve here with my husband. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. I'm living proof of that promise. I may have wandered away at times, but the truth that was instilled with me and the prayers that were prayed on my behalf were finally answered. Last fall, when the position for Associate Pastor of Families opened up here, we began to pray for discernment if the Lord would have us to serve here. The timing of Dustin being called to preach and Brian starting up one church really felt like it was part of God's plan. Dustin had a burden for the youth here, and so we began the process of waiting on the Lord. One of the Q&As that Pastor John had about the position, I remember Israel, he spoke up and started saying that we may be going through this process of taking up resumes and doing the interviews, but before we did any of that, before the position was even available, the Lord already had his man for the job lined up, that he was preparing his heart and his family for the job here at Ridgeview already. And I went home that night and I remember praying for the Lord just to show us. I've been watching Dustin prepare each week for Sunday school and seen him pray for the youth every day. And Israel was right, and the Lord indeed was preparing the right man. And I'm so thankful to say that that man was my husband. the weeks that we spent praying and waiting, many weeks waiting on the Lord and the search committee. The peace that we felt whenever they asked Dustin if he wanted to fill the position, and when we accepted the position, the peace was just indescribable. We knew this is where the Lord wanted us. So that brings us to tonight, basically. Stepping out of here is hard, but over the past few weeks, I've been trying to write down what I wanted to say and just thinking about what the Lord's done for me. I don't know how, as much as I didn't want to get up here, I don't know how I couldn't. I can't keep stuff like this quiet because the Lord's been good to me. So thank you. Thank you as a church for just loving on us the last few years. I want to encourage you, if you're not involved with Sunday school class or not involved with serving anywhere, just to step out of your boat, to get out of your comfort zone and really try to make an effort. I've been saved since I was 7. There's been times where people would probably doubt that if they looked at how I was living. But I've grown more in the past 2 years here than I have, grown closer to the Lord. And it's you all here that's ministered to us and spoke to us and sent me encouraging text that's done that.
My name is Rachel McCloud. I'm married to Jacob McCloud, and we have 2 children. Kagan, who is 9 years old, and Alyssa, who is 6 years old. I grew up in Kingsport, Tennessee. We only lived in Church Hill for 6 years. I was asked to give my testimony on what led me to Christ and accepting Him into my life. I thought to myself, why on earth would they pick me to give my testimony? I'm nobody special. I'm just a plain normal person that sits in the back of things, never speaks up or says anything. Then I thought to myself, I may not be a special person to everyone, but I'm special to God. And He chose me to do this. So I accepted His challenge, no matter how much I questioned myself on doing it. I knew regardless He was going to give me the push to push to. Let's just say I grew up going to church on and off during my childhood. I would mostly go with friends to church. I was saved when I was 7. But I really didn't understand what was going on. I went along with everyone else because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. I was not really knowing what it all meant. So years went by and we moved to Church Hill. I was so miserable when we first moved down here because I knew no one. But I decided it was time to start looking for churches to go to. So we went to a few, but none of them seemed like that's where I was supposed to be. But every day I would pass Ridgeview and I just couldn't get it off my mind. Well, years went by and I just couldn't get the fact that I wasn't positive I was saved off my mind. It was constantly consuming me for weeks. I would question myself, and I would question people. And then it went away. But then I started having dreams. I know people are going to think I'm crazy, but I'd had 2 dreams on 2 separate occasions about me being in random places trying to get the word out about God. And let me tell you, it really got to me. And they really hit hard about questioning my faith. And let me tell you, when God doesn't give up on you, He is just waiting patiently for you and waiting for you to listen. And finally, I listened to Him. That Sunday, I decided I was going to go to church. So we went as a family on Easter Sunday in 2015. And I felt God wanted me to go forward, but I just was scared. I didn't know anyone at this church, so I put it off once again. And the whole entire week I felt Him pulling on my heart. Come Sunday, again, April 12, 2015, I went to church with my daughter. That Sunday I sat alone and I felt it again. I started to get sweaty, anxious, and just felt my heart pounding. I knew it was time. So I waited patiently to the end of service to go up. I was a little weary at first. Like I said, I was alone and I didn't know anyone. I finally scooted to the end of the aisle, and like something suddenly pushed me, and I walked down the aisles and got saved that day. It was an emotional day like no other. I finally knew without a doubt that I was saved. No more questioning, and that the love that surrounded me that day was awesome. My whole perspective of life was different. I was changing. So the next week went by, and my husband had been questioning me all week. How do you know you're saved, Rachel? I kept telling him it was like a feeling no other. You just know. That Sunday, April 19, 2015, I decided I would go up and let everyone know I wanted to be baptized, not knowing my husband was behind me the whole time. He went forth that Sunday and surrendered his life as well. And I was so proud of him. He got his answer. We decided to get baptized together, and we did in the river. Our lives were changing. Our priorities were changing. Things that were important before weren't as important to us. We were putting God first, which was causing our marriage to grow closer. We were learning to be more patient, kind, and understanding. My temper was going down, and I was learning to think before I would get upset. I was changing as a person, and friends could see that. I did Vacation Bible School for the first time, and so enjoyed it. I was doing things I never did before, making friends in the process. I was learning things out of the Bible. My favorite verse is Ephesians 4:31. And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving to one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. I learned to forgive things that hurt me in the past, like my dad, who was never around. I learned to ask for forgiveness from others that I hurt. I was learning. And I was setting an example to my kids, because my oldest started asking questions about God, about being saved. He was learning about Bible verses, and he finally came forward and told us that he wanted to be saved. We sat down and asked him a few questions. Then we called Pastor John when he met with us that day. And on September 16th, Kagan accepted Jesus into his heart. I couldn't be more prouder of him. God has truly blessed my family. I give him all the credit. I still fail him daily, but he never fails me. He's always there to listen. He's there through my highest moments, and he's there through my lowest moments. I'm so thankful for all he does. Thank you for listening to my story.